The scent of cheap lavender body wash lingered in the air, its artificial sweetness mocking her as she stood in the middle of the living room. Tasha's fingers tightened around the plastic bottle, the only gift she had received for her birthday. On the couch, her younger sister Katrina sat scrolling through her phone, her freshly manicured nails tapping against the screen. Across the room, Joseph was admiring the brand new sneakers their father had just gifted him, sleek, expensive, and completely undeserved. Tasha felt the familiar sting of disappointment press against her ribs, squeezing tighter with each passing second. It was always like this. For years, she had been the backbone of this family, sacrificing her dreams, her money, and her time to keep them afloat. Yet, when it came to showing appreciation, they barely acknowledged her existence. Y'all really thought this was okay? Her voice cut through the room, sharp and trembling. Her mother, sitting with her legs curled beneath her on the recliner, barely looked up from her show. What are you talking about now, Tasha? Tasha's heart pounded against her ribs. This. She held up the bottle, her hand shaking. This is what I get after everything I do for this family? Meanwhile, Joseph gets $100 sneakers, and Katrina got a whole new phone last month just because she asked. I don't even get a dinner, a card, nothing. Joseph snorted, shaking his head. Damn, sis. It's not that deep. Not that deep. Tasha let out a hollow laugh, one that carried every ounce of resentment she had buried over the years. You know what? I'm done. She turned on her heel and stormed toward her room, her breath coming in short gasps. She had spent years breaking her back for this family, only to be treated like an afterthought. No more. This was the moment everything changed. Tasha sat on the edge of her bed, gripping the lavender body wash so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The small, flimsy bottle felt like a cruel joke, a symbol of everything she had endured in this house. A bitter lump rose in her throat as she looked around her room. It wasn't much. The walls were bare except for a few old posters she had put up as a teenager, and the mattress sagged slightly in the middle from years of use. There were no fancy decorations, no expensive comforts, nothing that reflected the years of sacrifice she had poured into this family. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, trying to fight the wave of emotions threatening to consume her. But no matter how hard she tried, the memories came crashing in. She was 18 when she first started carrying the weight of the family. Her father, Tyrone, had always been the man of the house in name only. He believed his role ended at working his low-paying factory job and barking orders at everyone else. When the factory laid him off 4 years ago, he refused to look for another job, choosing instead to sit around, complaining about how the world had done him wrong. Her mother, Lorraine, had never been ambitious either. She spent most of her days on the couch watching daytime TV, half listening to whatever drama was unfolding on her favorite reality shows. She rarely cooked, barely cleaned, and always found a reason why she couldn't contribute financially. That left Tasha. At 22, she worked 2 jobs, one as a cashier at a grocery store during the day and another as a server at a busy restaurant in the evenings. Her entire paycheck went into keeping the lights on, paying the rent, and making sure Joseph and Katrina had what they needed for school. She had been the one to sit in the dark when the power got shut off because her father had spent the last of their money on alcohol. She had been the one to beg landlords for extensions on rent when the bills piled too high. She had been the one who canceled plans with friends, ignored her own dreams, and gave up any chance of a normal life just to keep this family afloat. And what did she get in return? Nothing. Not even the basic courtesy of appreciation. A sharp knock at her door pulled her back to the present. Tasha, I need $40. It was Joseph. She scoffed, wiping her eyes as she stood up. Swinging the door open, she found him standing there, hand outstretched, completely unfazed by the fact that she had stormed off moments ago. For what? She asked, her voice dangerously calm. I got plans, he shrugged. Just let me hold it till next week. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. You still owe me from the last hold till next week. His expression darkened. Damn, it's not even that serious. You be actin' like money don't grow back. Tasha's stomach clenched. He said that like she had money to waste, like she wasn't the one constantly sacrificing while he sat around all day doing nothing. Her voice was steady when she spoke. No. Joseph blinked. What? I said no, she repeated. You're grown. Get a job. His jaw tensed, and for the first time, she saw something unfamiliar in his eyes, realization. He wasn't used to hearing no from her. He let out a frustrated sigh and shook his head. Man, whatever. He turned and walked away, muttering under his breath. Tasha closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. That was the first time she had ever refused to give them money. And for the first time in her life, she felt a small spark of something unfamiliar, freedom. She was finally done being used. And soon, she was going to walk away from all of this. For good. Tasha sat at the small dining table, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. The cheap plastic chair beneath her creaked as she leaned forward, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. She had been saving money for months, secretly stashing away every extra dollar she could from her paychecks. It wasn't much, but it was enough to put down a deposit on a place of her own. She had never dared to think of leaving before. For years, she convinced herself that her family needed her, that if she didn't hold things together, everything would fall apart. But after last night's birthday disaster and Joseph's entitled request for money, something in her snapped. She was tired of being their personal ATM, tired of being their unpaid maid, tired of feeling like she was nothing more than a convenience. This time, she was choosing herself. A listing caught her eye, a one-bedroom apartment on the east side of town, affordable and available immediately. She hesitated for only a second before clicking the number and dialing. Hello, a woman's voice answered. Hi, I'm calling about the apartment for rent, Tasha said, her voice steady. It's still available, the woman replied. Would you like to come see it? Yes, Tasha said without hesitation. As soon as possible. The next day, she found herself standing in the doorway of what could soon be her new home. It wasn't big, but it was hers. The walls were a plain beige, the floors a bit scuffed, but it was clean and quiet, everything her current house wasn't. The rent is due on the first of each month, and the deposit is 1 month's rent, the landlord, Ms. Harris, explained. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Do you have steady income? Yes, Tasha said confidently. I work 2 jobs. Ms. Harris nodded approvingly. That's what I like to hear. No drama, no nonsense, just someone who pays on time. She handed Tasha a set of papers. You fill these out, bring me the deposit, and the place is yours. Tasha took the papers with slightly trembling hands. This was it. Her escape. As she stepped outside, a wave of emotions crashed over her. Relief. Fear. Excitement. Guilt. Would they even notice she was gone? Would they care? She already knew the answer. But for the first time in her life, that didn't matter. She was leaving. And she wasn't looking back. Tasha walked into the house later that evening, her heart pounding as she stepped over the threshold. The familiar scent of stale air and leftover food filled her nostrils, making her stomach turn. It was the same chaos as always, Katrina lounging on the couch with her phone glued to her hand, Lorraine watching TV with a half-empty plate of food on her lap, and Joseph nowhere to be seen, probably out with his friends. No one even looked up when she walked in. She clenched her jaw, inhaling deeply. It was almost laughable. She had spent years running herself into the ground for this family, yet her presence barely registered. It only mattered when they needed something. And soon, they wouldn't have her to rely on anymore. She had officially put down the deposit for her new apartment that morning. The place was hers. In just a few days, she would be gone. But she couldn't let them know. If they found out, they would guilt-trip her, manipulate her, or worse, try to sabotage her plans. She needed to move in silence. That night, she started packing, quietly, carefully, strategically. She couldn't take everything at once. If she suddenly started boxing up all her things, they'd notice. So she started with the small stuff, her documents, sentimental items, clothes she didn't wear often. She packed them into grocery bags and carried them out of the house little by little, hiding them in the trunk of her car. She had never been more grateful for working late shifts. By the time she got home from work, everyone was usually asleep, giving her the perfect opportunity to move without being questioned. Each night, she made another trip to her new apartment, placing her belongings inside the empty space. It was slow, but it was working. By the third night, all she had left were her essentials, her work clothes, her toiletries, and the bare minimum to make it through the last 48 hours in this house. She was almost free. But just as she was zipping up her last bag, her bedroom door swung open. "What you doing?" Katrina's voice sliced through the quiet. Tasha froze, her pulse spiking. Katrina leaned against the doorframe, raising an eyebrow at the half-packed bag on Tasha's bed. "Stay calm." "Just cleaning up," Tasha lied smoothly, zipping the bag closed. "Getting rid of stuff I don't need." Katrina narrowed her eyes but shrugged. "Whatever." She turned and walked off, disappearing down the hall. Tasha let out a slow breath. That was too close. She needed to be gone by tomorrow. The next morning, she went through the house as if everything was normal. She grabbed her keys, slung her work bag over her shoulder, and walked out the door without a word. Except today, she wasn't coming back. She had already spoken to the landlord, her new keys were ready, her lease was signed, and the last of her things were waiting for her. As she drove away, she didn't look in the rearview mirror. For the first time in her life, she was truly free. Tasha turned the key in the lock, pushing the door open to her new apartment. A wave of silence washed over her. No arguing, no demands, no guilt trips, just peace. She stepped inside and exhaled, closing the door behind her. The apartment was still mostly empty, just a mattress on the floor, a few bags of clothes, and a single chair she had picked up from a thrift store. But to her, it felt like a palace. For the first time in her life, she had something that was hers. She dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and lay back on the mattress, staring at the ceiling. The last few days had been a whirlwind of planning, moving, and sneaking around. Now that she was here, it all hit her at once. She did it. She got out. A smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She didn't have much, but she had freedom. And that was worth more than anything. The first few days felt like an extended vacation. She decorated little by little, buying things as she could afford them, cheap but functional furniture, a set of dishes, a few cozy blankets. She found joy in the smallest things, like cooking in a quiet kitchen without someone demanding food, or taking a shower without someone pounding on the door. For the first time in years, she could breathe. She also started reconnecting with herself. She went for walks in the park, sat at coffee shops just to enjoy the atmosphere, and even started journaling, something she hadn't done since high school. She also let herself rest. At home, she had never been able to sleep in. There was always something to do, someone to take care of. But now, she could lay in bed as long as she wanted. It felt like a luxury. But just as she was settling into her new life, the phone calls started. At first, she ignored them. Missed calls from Mom, from Joseph, even from Katrina. Then came the texts. "Mom, where are you? You didn't come home last night." "Mom, Tasha, answer me. This is not funny." "Joseph, wow. So you just up and leave? That's messed up." "Katrina, Mom is freaking out. You need to come home." Tasha read them but didn't reply. She had expected this. They had never cared when she was there, but the moment she wasn't around to clean up their mess, suddenly they were concerned. She wasn't falling for it. By the end of the week, the messages turned into guilt trips. "Mom, I don't know how you could do this to us." "Mom, after everything I've done for you." "Joseph, wow, you're selfish as hell." "Katrina, you just left us here? You really don't care." Tasha sighed, rubbing her temples. They still didn't get it. She wasn't going back. One evening, her phone rang again. This time, she answered. "Tasha, how could you do this to me?" Lorraine's voice came through, shrill with anger. Tasha closed her eyes, steadying her breath. I didn't do anything to you, Ma. I just left. You abandoned your family. No, Tasha said firmly. I stopped letting my family abandon me. A stunned silence filled the line. I love y'all, she continued. But I'm done sacrificing myself for people who don't appreciate me. Lorraine scoffed. Oh, so you think you're better than us now? Tasha shook her head, a bitter smile forming. There it was. This was never about me leaving, was it? She said. It's about the fact that I finally told y'all no. Silence again. Look, Ma, I hope y'all figure it out, but I'm not coming back. And with that, she hung up. For the first time in her life, she chose herself. And it felt damn good. Tasha's phone didn't ring for 3 days. She had expected more calls, more guilt trips, but instead silence. It should have felt like peace, but it didn't. She knew her family well enough to understand what this meant. They weren't done. They were just changing tactics. She carried on with her new life, trying to push the unease aside. She went to work, came home, enjoyed the quiet. She even started dating a guy named Marcus she had met at a bookstore. It felt nice to have conversations that weren't about bills, chores, or family drama. But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time before her past tried to drag her back. And she was right. One night, she was curled up on the couch, flipping through channels, when she heard a loud banging on her front door. Her stomach clenched. She already knew who it was. She stood slowly, creeping toward the peephole. Joseph. And he wasn't alone. Their father was with him. Tasha's heartbeat thumped in her ears. She took a deep breath and unlocked the door, opening it just a crack. Joseph shoved the door open, forcing her back. Are you serious, Tasha? His voice was filled with anger. You really thought you could just walk out on us like that? Her father stood behind him, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Tasha tightened her grip on the doorframe, forcing herself to stand her ground. I didn't walk out on you. I left for my own good. Her father scoffed. And what about us? You left your family to struggle while you live here all comfortable. Tasha let out a bitter laugh. Struggle? You mean like I did for years? While y'all sat back and watched. Joseph stepped forward, his jaw clenched. We need money, Tasha. There it was. That's what this is about, huh? She said, her voice cold. You don't care where I am. You just care that the money stopped coming in. Their father's eyes darkened. You better start remembering who your family is. Tasha folded her arms. Oh, I remember. That's why I left. Joseph's hands curled into fists. We ain't playing with you. You're gonna help us, one way or another. A chill ran down her spine. Something about his tone sent alarm bells ringing in her head. She took a step back, keeping her expression calm. You need to leave. Now. Joseph shook his head. We're not leaving without something. Before she could react, he grabbed her purse from the counter. Tasha lunged forward. Joseph, put it down. He smirked, digging through it. Let's see how much Big Sis has been hiding. Fury boiled in Tasha's chest. She had sacrificed years of her life for them, and this was how they repaid her? Something inside her snapped. She grabbed the closest thing she could, a heavy glass candle holder, and hurled it at Joseph. It hit his arm with a loud crack. Damn it, Tasha, he yelled, dropping the purse. Their father grabbed him. Let's go, he muttered. Joseph glared at her, rubbing his arm. You're gonna regret this. Tasha didn't flinch. She refused to show fear. Try me, she said, voice like steel. They left, slamming the door behind them. She locked it, her hands shaking. They weren't going to stop. And next time, she might not be so lucky. Tasha barely slept that night. She sat on the couch, arms wrapped around herself, flinching at every noise outside. She knew her family, and she knew Joseph. This wasn't over. By morning, exhaustion weighed her down, but she forced herself up, brewed a cup of coffee, and tried to think clearly. She needed to protect herself. Her first call was to the building manager. There was an incident at my apartment last night, she explained. My brother and father forced their way in. Damn, the man muttered. You want to file a report? Yes, she said firmly. She had spent too many years letting things slide, letting people take advantage of her. She wouldn't do it anymore. A few hours later, she sat at the police station, filing a restraining order against both of them. She felt a mix of emotions: anger, fear, guilt, but mostly relief. They weren't going to intimidate her anymore. The following week, the silence returned. No calls, no messages. But then, a loud crash woke her in the middle of the night. Her heart leapt into her throat. She ran to the living room and froze. Her front window was shattered. Glass shards covered the floor, a brick lying in the middle of the room. Her breath came in short gasps. They really did this. Her phone shook in her hand as she dialed 911. She wasn't safe here anymore. By morning, the police had come and gone, taking a report and assuring her they'd investigate. But Tasha knew better. She had to take matters into her own hands. She packed a bag. She wasn't running away. She was upgrading. Her lease was month to month. She had saved enough to move somewhere safer, somewhere her family couldn't reach her. By the end of the day, she had signed a new lease. A gated apartment. Security cameras. A fresh start. She gave her landlord notice, packed her things, and left without a trace. The day she moved in, she stood in the doorway of her new place, taking it all in. No one knew where she was. No one could find her. For the first time in her life, she felt completely free. She smiled, locking the door behind her. Let them try now. Tasha settled into her new apartment, reveling in the peace that came with her fresh start. No unexpected knocks, no demands, no threats. She could finally breathe. She threw herself into work, spent time with Marcus, and even started reconnecting with old friends she had lost touch with while drowning in family obligations. For the first time, her life was hers. But peace never lasts when the past refuses to stay buried. One evening, she was leaving work when her phone vibrated. Unknown caller. She almost ignored it but decided to answer. Hello? A sharp breath on the other end. Then, her mother's voice. Tasha, it's me. Tasha stiffened. She hadn't spoken to her mother in weeks. What do you want? She asked flatly. A heavy sigh. Your father's in jail. Tasha's lips parted in surprise, but she quickly masked it. And? Her mother's voice cracked. They took him in for the damage to your apartment and unpaid restitution. Joseph's still locked up too. And now? She sniffled dramatically. Now I have nothing, Tasha. No money. Nowhere to go. Tasha's stomach twisted, but she kept her tone even. What do you expect me to do about that? Her mother scoffed. Are you seriously asking me that? I'm your mother. You're supposed to help me. Tasha closed her eyes. All these years. All the sacrifices. And still, her mother saw her as nothing more than a provider. I did help, she said coldly. For years. And you all treated me like nothing. Now you want me to fix everything again. Tasha, please. Tasha hung up. She felt nothing. No guilt. No sadness. Just relief. That was the last time she spoke to her mother. As the weeks passed, she heard rumors. Her mother's health declined. Katrina had fallen in with the wrong people and was arrested for fraud. The family home was abandoned, vandalized, and eventually taken over by squatters. Tasha watched from a distance. She felt no joy in their suffering, but she wasn't sorry either. They had made their choices. And for once, she had made hers. Her past no longer owned her. She was free, and she would never look back. Hi, besties. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.